Welcome everyone to our discussion on wellness in the home. One of the facts I read about is that we live our lives now so much indoors, and that's the health of our indoor living is greatly impacting us way more than it used to when we were children. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the stats show, especially post-COVID, it's 93% on average we're spending indoors, right? That's 8 hours of sleep. You should get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That's a third of your life. So depending on your age, a third of your life is in one room. That room better have good air quality. It better have good shading so that you get the deepest sleep. Your melatonin production is at its peak when it's dark without any blue light, right? So those types of things are crucial. So because we spend so much time in our homes, I normally say health starts at home.
The other thing I'd like to maybe talk to everybody about is, the idea of sick building syndrome, or what is the ramifications of, how we build homes these days. I don't know if anybody has any input on that and wants to talk about it.
I'll start off because you brought up an interesting point, because where are we with health and well-being in homes or the built environment? I'll just give you a kind of a 30K overview. In 1972, we had the Clean Air Act. Because so much industrialization was creating massive amounts of air pollution outside, the air, believe it or not, is better today than it was back in the 70s because of the Clean Air Act. The problem is, with the oil embargo of the 70s and 80s, the energy crisis, housing started to be built more tightly. And then all these chemicals, VOCs, off-gassing from paints, furniture started to get trapped in tighter homes, and we're being exposed to it, and that's causing detriment to health. The good news is, 2 years ago, the White House had the IAQ, like a symposium. They met strictly to create a regulation for indoor air like they did for outdoor air. 2 House representatives put a bill forth together just this past summer. So if these things start to keep building momentum, we're going to have regulations for indoor air. It's going to protect millions, hundreds of millions of people. Right. And so I think we're in a good spot, but it's not good enough yet. We have to keep pushing the needle.
I'd say from my perspective, I think a lot of it comes down to being able to measure air quality. And it's something that really isn't something, you saw it within the COVID sort of pandemic. There was an interest in it, and you started to see air sensors work their way into commercial environments, into offices. And the idea of the number of changes that a house or an office's air might have in a certain period of time did start to kind of creep up a little bit in terms of the sort of popular kind of idea of air quality. But with COVID going away, I think people have sort of taken some of those ideas and also pushed them with the trauma of COVID to the side. But I think the productive thing we can pull from that is that there's tons of new technology that because of COVID came to the forefront. Everything from UV treatments to air filtration and some concepts around, filtration and what is good and what is bad. And people were spending a lot of time reading about these things. And so I think the other big thing was this idea that, yes, you can buy a sensor. And they're YouTube influencers doing videos about what's a good sensor to detect carbon dioxide. That can affect maybe productivity. It can focus. A lot of people are working from home, but like you said, VOCs as well. So it's like you can't change what you can't measure, right? They say that. So I think it starts with this idea of, well, let's get a baseline. Let's find out what our air quality is. It might be good, it might be bad, and then figure out ways to change it. So it can start kind of as a concept with a very simple thing, which is, where do you spend most of your time? Maybe bedroom, living room, home office. 3 sensors, they're very cheap. You get them, put them on an app, and then start to measure it, right? Start to see what happens when you open the window, right? CO2 levels go down, right? Or you turn on the fan, or, I think, you touched on this earlier, this idea of passive houses and the very tight kind of housing, and understanding what effect all of that has on all these things. Part of it is efficiency, part of it's certainly about, lowering operational costs and being green. But on the flip side of that, we also have to look at the health ramifications.